Out there? Yes, clear. Loud and clear.
Pacific. 4423 live. Look at the mobile station.
On the intercom. C7?
Yes, ma'am. We'll be clear, and 233 will be clear on it, and for E. Edward, and so we'll both be at 50.
My name is Michael Turner. Until that morning, my life was as ordinary as it gets here in Kansas City. I worked at a distribution hub near the rail lines, handling logistics, boxes, shipments, trucks going in and out. In the heartland of America, we don't usually think of ourselves as the front line of anything. Wars, disasters, chaos. They always seemed like problems happening somewhere else. September 14th, 8:02 a.m., the air smelled like rain, and the streets were quiet except for the rumble of trucks heading to the interstate. I had just poured my first coffee when every phone in the office buzzed at once. The emergency alert system cut through the room with that shrill, unshakable tone. This is not a test. Strategic missile activity has been detected. Shelter immediately. Follow official instructions. The words didn't make sense at first. Some of us laughed nervously, like it had to be a glitch. Kansas? Why Kansas? We don't have skyscrapers like New York or ports like Houston. But the truth hit fast. The heartland isn't just farmland. We're the arteries of the nation. Rail lines, highways, supply chains. Cut the center, and the whole body collapses. By 8:10, the radio station switched to government feeds. A reporter's voice cracked as she confirmed what everyone feared. Satellites had tracked multiple launches across the Atlantic. Nobody could say where they'd land. The words, high probability targets, echoed like a death sentence. Looking out the warehouse windows, I saw panic unfold in real time. Cars jammed intersections. Parents abandoned vehicles to sprint toward schools. In the distance, black smoke already rose. Not from bombs, but from overturned trucks and small fires lit by chaos itself. Inside, we debated whether to run or stay. Someone shouted about Fort Riley 2 hours west being on high alert. Someone else said Whiteman Air Force Base could be a target. That was when it struck me. This wasn't random. Kansas wasn't safe because it was Middle America. We were in the crosshairs because of what we carried. Food, fuel, steel, ammunition. Without us, the coasts would starve. By 8:30, the power grid flickered and died. The hum of machines fell silent, leaving only the sound of sirens and people crying in the dark. That was the moment I knew life would never return to what it had been just 30 minutes earlier. The heartland of America had become a battlefield, and we were right in the middle of it. The sirens outside had driven us underground. We crowded into a maintenance tunnel beneath the distribution hub, a place never meant to be a shelter, but it was all we had. The concrete walls sweated with moisture, the air heavy and stale. Every breath felt like inhaling fear itself. I sat on the floor with my back against a pipe, knees pulled tight to my chest. Around me, co-workers whispered prayers, argued about what was happening, or simply stared blankly at the ground. Somewhere in the darkness, a baby cried, its wail echoing off the walls, reminding us all of how powerless we were. But my mind wasn't on the missiles, or the bases, or even the chaos on the streets above. It was on my dog, Cooper. He was still at home, curled up in the small house on the edge of town. I had filled his bowl with food that morning before work, ruffled his fur, and promised I'd be back by evening. That promise already felt broken. The thought hit me like a physical blow. While I hid underground, he was waiting by the door, ears pricking up at every distant siren, not understanding why I hadn't returned. If the blasts came, if fire and shock waves ripped through the city, who would protect him? Who would even know he was there? The guilt pressed down harder than the concrete above. I clenched my fists, trying to push the image away, but it kept returning. His brown eyes looking up at me, trusting me in a world that no longer made sense. Around me, others had their own ghosts. One man whispered his daughter's name over and over. A woman clutched a photo of her parents. Down there in the dark, we weren't workers or citizens anymore. We were just people stripped to our most fragile selves, clinging to whatever piece of life we feared to lose most. A low rumble shook the ground. Dust trickled from the ceiling, and the lights flickered, throwing the tunnel into momentary blackness. Someone screamed. Someone else shouted, "It's starting!" I pressed my palms to the cold floor, trying to anchor myself as the world above us seemed to split apart. I told myself Cooper was strong, that maybe he'd survive, that maybe, somehow, I'd see him again. But deep down, I knew, no matter what happened next, I'd never forgive myself for leaving him behind. In the silence that followed, my chest ached with more than fear. It ached with the weight of love. Love for something as simple, as pure, as a dog waiting faithfully at the end of a world unraveling. The silence underground didn't last long. A crackling voice burst through an old battery-powered radio someone had managed to bring down with them. It was the emergency broadcast system again, but this time there was no mistaking the tone. Calm, clipped, and absolute. Attention residents of Kansas City. Multiple incoming strikes have been confirmed. Estimated time of impact, under 1 hour. Shelter in place. Military response is active. This is not a drill. The words landed like hammers. Some people cried out. Others froze, their faces pale as chalk in the dim light. The idea that there was time left had given us a thread of hope. But now, with every tick of the second hand, we were counting down to 0. Above ground, the city had turned into a fortress. Reports said convoys of armored vehicles were sealing off highways. Fighter jets roared overhead, carving the sky in desperate arcs. Every base in the region, Fort Riley, Whiteman, was on maximum alert. But even with all that power, no one truly believed they could stop what was coming. Inside the tunnel, people moved with new urgency. Someone handed out bottles of water. Another scrawled names and phone numbers on scraps of paper, as if any of it would matter when the fire came. I sat motionless, the radio pressed to my ear, waiting for some miracle phrase, some line that would say it had all been a mistake. But there was nothing like that. Instead, the updates grew colder. Impact expected in the central corridor. Civilian survival dependent on underground shelter. The word central corridor rang in my skull. That was us. Kansas was no longer just a dot on a map. We were the target. A soldier appeared at the tunnel entrance, rifle slung across his chest, sweat streaking down his face. He shouted for calm, told us the military was coordinating defenses. But even in his voice, I heard the cracks, like he was saying the words because they were orders, not because he believed them. I thought of Cooper again. My dog was out there, in a small house that stood no chance against what was coming. My chest tightened until it hurt to breathe. The people around me muttered prayers, made promises to God, or sat in stunned silence. And then the broadcast repeated one final phrase, over and over, like a clock ticking down. Prepare for impact. Prepare for impact. Prepare for impact. The tunnel seemed to shrink around us, every sound magnified by the fear pressing in on all sides. Above our heads, Kansas City braced itself. Underground, we did the only thing left. We waited for the sky to fall. It began with light. Not the kind you see on the 4th of July, not even the glare of the sun on a summer day. This light cut through concrete and steel, through eyelids squeezed shut, through the very air we breathed. One moment the tunnel was dim and suffocating. The next it was seared in white as if the earth itself had opened its eyes. Then came the sound. A roar so vast, so consuming, it wasn't really sound at all. It was pressure, it was fury, it was the planet screaming. The floor buckled under us. Dust and rock rained from the ceiling. People were thrown against the walls like rag dolls. Someone shouted, but the voice was swallowed before it could reach me. The shockwave hit next. It felt like every bone in my body cracked at once. The air was torn from my lungs, replaced by heat and ash. Pipes above us split open, spewing steam into the already choking dark. The ground itself groaned like it was about to split apart. I clutched at the floor, my fingers bleeding as I tried to hold on to something, anything. In the chaos, I thought of Cooper. Was he gone already? Was there even a house left standing above us? The thought stabbed deeper than the pain in my ribs. Another blast wave rolled through, harder than the first. The tunnel lights flickered once, twice, then died. We were blind, deaf, drowning in the vibration of a world being torn to pieces. Screams rose and vanished in the thunder. Somewhere in the blackness, metal twisted and collapsed. Time lost all meaning. Was it seconds? Minutes? The only measure was the way the earth kept heaving beneath us, like the city above had been ripped apart and was still falling. When the noise finally eased, it wasn't silence that followed. It was a new sound, low, endless, like the growl of a wounded giant. Fires, collapse, the death rattle of Kansas City. I pressed my forehead against the cold concrete, shaking, soaked in sweat and dust. My chest burned, my ears rang. Somewhere in the dark, a child whimpered, and that small human sound pierced deeper than the explosions ever could. Kansas, the heartland, had become ground zero, and in that moment, huddled beneath the ruins, I realized the truth. Whatever world existed before the blast was gone. What came after? No one could yet imagine.
Would you send an UPS clip? Loud and clear.
Pacific. 4423 line, look at the mobile station. America. C7?
Yes, ma'am, we'll be clear, and 233 will be clear on the N4. Edward, and so we both be efficient.
At first, I thought I was dead. The blast had been so total, so absolute, that my mind refused to believe I could still feel the weight of my own body. But then the cough came, a sharp burn in my throat, lungs clawing for air thick with dust and smoke. I was alive. Somehow. The tunnel was pitch black. Only the faint red glow of an emergency light pulsed at the far end, barely enough to show the outlines of broken pipes and collapsed ceiling panels. The air was heavy with the smell of burning plastic and concrete. Every breath felt poisoned. Around me, people stirred. Some cried out names. Others coughed so hard it sounded like their lungs were tearing. A man nearby tried to stand, but fell back with a scream. His leg twisted unnaturally beneath him. Someone else whispered prayers through cracked lips. I reached for the floor, feeling grit and warm liquid. Blood. I didn't know if it was mine. The silence of the city was gone. Above us, the earth still rumbled, but different now, like a giant fire had been unleashed, feeding hungrily on what remained of Kansas City. Every so often, another thud shook the tunnel. Maybe buildings collapsing, maybe secondary blasts. Each one reminded us the world we'd known was gone. I closed my eyes and pictured Cooper, my dog alone in the ruins, terrified, searching for me where no one would come. The image was unbearable, yet I clung to it, because it meant there was still something human left inside me, some reason to fight for survival. Someone finally found the courage to speak. We have to get out. See if anything's left, but the words sounded fragile, almost absurd. Was there even an outside anymore? The soldier from earlier stumbled into view, his uniform torn, face gray with ash. His voice was hoarse but steady. Stay down. The surface is gone. Radiation. Firestorms. We wait. His words didn't bring comfort. They froze the blood in our veins. The idea of climbing up into the remains of the city was both necessary and impossible. None of us wanted to see it, yet all of us needed to know. The child who had cried earlier let out a soft whimper. That sound, fragile, alive, reminded me that survival mattered, even if hope was just a thread. In the aftermath of the blast, there was no Kansas City anymore. Only us, buried in the dark, clinging to life in a world that had already burned. Hours blurred together in the darkness. We had no way to measure time except for the pounding in our chests and the groans of the earth above us. The soldier insisted we wait, but waiting felt like dying slowly. The air grew hotter, thicker. Every breath scraped like sandpaper. Finally, someone snapped. A young man, face streaked with soot, pushed toward the tunnel entrance. "I can't stay down here anymore," he muttered, voice shaking. "If I'm going to die, I'll see the sky when it happens." No one stopped him. Truth was, most of us wanted to follow. The soldier relented with a grim nod. One group, "Careful. Stay low." His eyes betrayed what his words didn't. He didn't expect us to come back. We moved together, stumbling through debris, following the faint draft of air toward the stairwell. Each step upward was heavier than the last, the silence broken only by our coughing and the drip of water from cracked pipes. The smell reached us first. Burning metal, scorched earth, something chemical and vile that clawed at our throats. When we reached the final steel door, we hesitated. My hand trembled on the handle. Behind that door was the world as it now existed, whatever remained of Kansas City. My stomach clenched with terror and guilt. Was Cooper's body just beyond this door, buried in rubble and ash? We pushed. The hinges groaned, and a wave of heat poured in. Not flames, just heat, radiating from a world that had been set on fire. We emerged into silence. The city I had known was unrecognizable. Buildings were skeletons, twisted frames clawing at the orange sky. Streets were rivers of rubble. Fires crackled in the distance, painting the horizon in shifting shades of red and black. The air shimmered with smoke so thick it blurred everything into ghostly shapes. No voices, no traffic, no life. Just the hiss of fire and the moan of wind through the ruins. I staggered forward, knees weak, trying to comprehend the scale. Kansas City wasn't wounded. It was gone, wiped clean in the span of a heartbeat. Beside me, someone fell to their knees, sobbing uncontrollably. Another whispered, "We're the only ones left." I couldn't answer. My thoughts were somewhere else, searching desperately for a wagging tail in the ash, for any sign of Cooper. But deep down I knew this wasn't a city anymore. It was a graveyard. The city was gone, but not everything. As we stumbled through the ruins, a soldier approached, his face hidden beneath layers of ash and sweat. "There's a safe zone," he told us, voice hoarse. "Triage tents. Families, survivors, follow me." We moved as a group, weaving through the wreckage. Every step was a reminder of what had been lost. Charred cars lined the streets, entire blocks flattened into nothing more than gray dust. Yet in the distance, through the smoke, I saw something unexpected. The flicker of floodlights, their beams cutting through the haze like fragile promises. When we reached the perimeter, I almost couldn't believe it. Dozens of tents stretched across what had once been a football field. Soldiers and medics rushed between them, guiding dazed families, handing out water, checking wounds. It wasn't much, but compared to the desolation outside, it felt like another world. And then I noticed something that nearly dropped me to my knees. A fenced section near the far end, where volunteers gathered animals. Dogs barked, cats mewed, even a few cages rattled with the sound of terrified birds. My heart stopped. I pushed forward, my voice cracking as I asked every soldier, every medic I passed, "Have you seen a brown dog? Medium-sized? His name's Cooper." Most shook their heads. One told me gently, "We're still bringing them in. Don't give up." Those words became my lifeline. Minutes dragged like hours as I stood by the fence, scanning every shape, every pair of eyes that looked back at me through the smoke. I saw a shepherd missing half its fur, a beagle howling for its owner, even a trembling kitten clinging to a soldier's sleeve. But no Cooper. My chest ached. The guilt of leaving him, the image of him waiting by the door, crashed over me again. Maybe it was too late. Maybe the fire had taken him like it had taken so much else. And then I heard it. A bark, sharp, familiar, desperate. My head snapped around. At the far corner of the enclosure, half hidden behind another dog, a dusty, trembling shape pressed against the fence. His tail thumped weakly against the ground. Cooper. I don't remember moving. 1 second I was frozen. The next I was on my knees at the fence, arms reaching through, tears streaming down my face. He barked again, louder this time, and shoved his nose into my hands. His fur was singed, his eyes wide with fear, but it was him. Against all odds, it was him. A volunteer hurried over, fumbling with the latch. "Is he yours?" she asked. My voice broke as I answered, "He's mine." When the gate opened, Cooper leapt into my arms, nearly knocking me backward. His tongue covered my face, his body shaking with relief. I buried my face in his fur, whispering over and over, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "I've got you now," around us. People watched, some smiling faintly, others wiping their own tears. For a moment in that shattered world, the safe zone wasn't just tents and fences. It was proof that not everything had been destroyed. Love had survived. In the heart of Kansas, surrounded by ash and ruin, I held my dog and felt something I thought had been erased forever. Hope. The safe zone was eerily quiet. Survivors, still covered in ash and soot, gathered around flickering radios and the occasional screen. Families huddled close, holding children and pets, eyes wide and haunted. For a moment, the world outside seemed frozen, suspended between horror and disbelief. Then, the broadcast began. The president's face appeared, framed by the American flag, his expression grave, every line etched with determination. Even through static and the weak signal, his voice carried clearly, cutting through the fear like a blade. "My fellow Americans," he began, steady and unwavering, "our nation has faced an attack unlike any in our history. Kansas City, our heartland, and critical centers across the country have been struck by acts intended to break our spirit." He paused, letting the weight of those words settle over the gathered survivors. Children clung to parents, dogs pressed close to shaking legs, and even the air seemed to hold its breath. "But hear me now," the president continued, his voice rising with controlled intensity. "We will not yield. We will not falter. The United States of America will rise from this devastation stronger, more united, and more determined than ever before. Those who sought to destroy us will face consequences they cannot imagine." Around me, people's faces shifted from despair to a fragile spark of hope. The message was clear. Survival was not the end. It was the beginning of a reckoning. Our armed forces, our emergency responders, and our citizens are mobilized. We will restore order, protect our people, and ensure that those responsible for this attack are held accountable with a precision and determination the world has never witnessed. I felt a chill run down my spine. The promise of vengeance was raw, but it was accompanied by something more powerful. The certainty that America would not crumble. That in the face of annihilation, the spirit of its people endured. The president's gaze swept the camera, unyielding. To those who remain in the shadows, plotting further harm, know this. Your actions have awakened a force that will not be stopped. From the ashes of our cities, we will build, we will defend, and we will prevail. Our resolve is absolute, our commitment eternal. As the broadcast ended, silence filled the safe zone. No one moved immediately. The weight of loss was still there, undeniable, but beneath it, a new determination took root. Murmurs of resolve spread like wildfire. People clasped hands, hugged, and some even nodded to one another, as if to say, "We will endure." I held Cooper close, feeling the warmth of his small body against mine. The ash on my hands and face didn't matter. The message had reached not just the ears of the nation, but the heart. America was wounded, yes, but not defeated. And in the quiet aftermath, surrounded by survivors, I realized something powerful. We would fight back, and the world would witness a response forged from fire, loss, and unbreakable spirit. The president's words echoed in my mind, and for the first time since the attack, I believed them. America would rise. From the ashes, we would return, and the reckoning would be unlike anything history had ever seen.
Southbound PS clear. Loud and clear.
Pacific. 4423 live, look at the mobile station.
C7?
C7?
Yes, ma'am, we'll be clear, and 233 will be clear on the N4 E Edward, and so we both be efficient.
I sat on a worn cot in the safe zone, Cooper resting at my feet, ears twitching at every distant sound. Around me, the air was thick with dust, ash, and the quiet murmurs of survivors. The city of Kansas, my city, our city, had been reduced to rubble, yet life stubbornly clung to the cracks. I let my gaze drift across the tents, the makeshift shelters, the lines of people still carrying hope amid devastation. In that moment, a realization settled deep in my chest. One attack, no matter how destructive, could not break a nation forged through centuries of trials, triumphs, and resilience. America had faced war, disaster, and hardship before. Each time it had emerged stronger, determined, unyielding. I thought about the streets I had walked, the skyline that now lay in ruin, and yet in my mind, I saw the heartbeat of the city. Children laughing, families moving through life, neighbors helping neighbors. That heartbeat could not be extinguished. Not by bombs, not by fire, not by fear. The president's message echoed in my memory, a vow of retaliation and restoration, a reminder that even amid chaos, leadership and resolve endured. But beyond orders and strategies, I felt something deeper, the unshakable spirit of the people. Men and women who had risen from tragedy before, who had rebuilt from ashes, who had carried on when all seemed lost. That spirit coursed through the safe zone, through every hand clasped in solidarity, through every act of kindness toward strangers and survivors alike. I thought of Cooper, his small head resting on my lap, his eyes reflecting the flickering lights of the tents. Even in his fear, he had survived. And in that survival, I saw a metaphor for the country itself. Scarred, shaken, but alive. Resilient, determined, indomitable. The sky outside was gray and heavy, but I imagined it clearing, imagined life returning to the streets, imagined communities rebuilding stronger, more united, more vigilant than ever. The bombs may have scarred our land, but they could not touch the essence of what made this country great. The courage, ingenuity, and determination of its people were far beyond any weapon's reach. In that quiet reflection, I understood something profound. America is not defined by a single city, a single moment, or a single attack. It is defined by its refusal to surrender, by its insistence on survival and progress, by the enduring flame of liberty and resilience that no enemy can ever extinguish. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of loss and the spark of hope intertwine. One city may be gone, one day may be forever changed, but the country, the people, the spirit, unbroken. America would endure. America would rise. And the story of this nation, the most powerful in the history of histories, would continue, unstoppable, unyielding, eternal.